Good morning, everybody. Dan Wilmot here, and I am going to answer the questions from last night's session on how to get into VoiceOver. I'll just go through the questions as they are, and then we'll go accordingly. So I'm going to share the screen so you can see what the questions are. Also, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see information on VoiceSpot classes coming up. It's actually a website you can go to find out all the information. If you're a brand new beginner, our first 3-week class, it's Saturdays and Sundays in the afternoon, a couple hours each day, starts on Saturday. That's tomorrow. And if you're a little bit more experienced, we have a level 2 that starts on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. So there you go. So let's have a look at these questions. Some of these we touched on last night, but I'm just going to go over them again quickly so that everybody has them. How do you prevent saliva sounds when recording speech? The best way that I have found, there's all kinds, but the best way I have found is a Granny Smith apple, one of these guys. I hate the taste of it, but it works really, really well. You can put Vaseline on your teeth. You can, there's things you can get at the pharmacy called, it's basically spit in a bottle you can spray in your mouth, but those are just kind of gross. Granny Smith apple, it solves a couple of problems. You can just nibble on it a little bit before doing voice work, and it cleans out the stickiness between your teeth and your lips, which is what gives you that sticky, sticky sound. If you get nervous and haven't been drinking enough water, that's when you're going to get those sounds. So when you're doing a recording session and you're new at it, guess what happens? Granny Smith apple, I haven't found anything that works better than that. And theoretically, you can now write it off as a business expense, theoretically. What does an audio interface do? An audio interface takes an analog microphone, a standard microphone, and allows you to plug it in through the USB in your computer. I use, this is great for portable studios. I use a Focusrite Scarlett. You see that there? And you've got the USB on one side, and you plug in the microphone right there. Okay? That's if you don't have a USB microphone. Generally, analog microphones tend to be better quality, but USB microphones are getting better. 3, what advice do you have on accent work? If you can do an accent, that's great, really promote it. Do not do an accent unless you're really good at it. Long gone are the days of doing bad accents. If you're building a character, that's one thing. Bad accents are great for characters. Bad accents are not good for general voice work. Okay. And if you do accents or do different voices or different languages, definitely put that in your information when you're presenting yourself and marketing yourself. Number 4, are there specific kinds of dialogue scripts that are better for voice acting, or can we practice scripts from TV shows, movies, etc.? I would look for scripts of what you want to work on. If you're looking for doing an audiobook, just read a book out loud. If you're looking to do commercials, just find commercial scripts. You can find tons of them online. Just write down commercial script online. The same way you find TV shows and movie scripts, but find scripts of the work you want to do and practice on those. Number 5, when doing audiobooks, should you change voices to distinguish between characters? Yes, but not. It's not a cartoon. I just did an audiobook that was set on a cruise ship, so there was about 30 different voices, different accents and things like that. It was very difficult. Make it different. So if you're talking, you're the narrator, you talk as yourself, you know, giving whatever emotion you want. Then all of a sudden, a woman walked in and she had this to say. So each character has to have a different intonation and a different attitude. That's more what is important when you're doing audiobooks than having all these different. And then a woman walked in and she said, you're right, it's very distracting and people get tired of it very, very quickly. And it's also very hard to have an emotional state in a funny, silly little voice. So save those for children's books. When you're reading books to your kids, save those funny little voices for that. It's a great way to practice as well. But for audiobooks, it's an allude to the accent, allude to the person. And it's more about their intention and their attitude than it is their voice. So I can do female voices just by raising my tone a little bit and just saying, she said, "Is this okay?" He said, as he looked at her, or whatever, you know, that kind of thing. You've got to have a differentiation between the different people and even the narrator, but just allude to it. Don't make a completely different voice. And if you listen to people who try to do different voices, it drives you nuts. How do you make a demo reel? Depending on what you're doing, animation, obviously you do a bunch of different characters and you splice them together. Don't make it really, really long. The most difficult one, I think, is doing a commercial demo, because those are very professionally done traditionally, where you have a fully produced commercial. You only use a portion of it. You only need about 8 seconds for a commercial. For a narration, you need about 30 seconds to a minute. For an audiobook, you need a paragraph per style. So you might want to have 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs for an audiobook. For a documentary or a narration piece, you might have 2 or 3 30-second pieces. Those don't need a lot of production. They just need good quality and clean, and you need to sound good. Commercials, it's a little more produced. You really should get that done professionally, because you're going to be up against people that have had it done professionally. And if yours isn't, it's just going to pale by comparison. There is a little bit of leeway right now because of COVID, but not a lot, not a lot. Like I say, the longer form, e-learning, things like that, go listen to what people who are doing it in the business. You can find them online in various locations. You can even go to some agencies and they'll have some of the demo reels posted. Listen to other demo reels to find out what it is you need to do for that type of performance. Where did I leave off here? Would you work more seating or standing up? I would say standing up, always work standing up. However, when we were watching the movie last night, you notice people would have these big chairs that they're leaning on. If you're doing a long session, a 6-hour session, a 4-hour session, or an audiobook, it's very difficult to stay standing for the entire performance. What I do is for long commercial sessions or for animation sessions or anything like that is I will stand, but then I will lean on those chairs. You'll notice they're a higher chair or stool, just to rest in between takes or whatever. But I do stand for performance. Audiobooks, it's virtually impossible. The first couple of audiobooks that I did, I stood. It's really hard because you're performing all the time. You're performing constantly, and those sessions go between 4 and 6 hours. It's just too long. One thing I did learn after doing a couple of audiobooks is you take a break after each chapter. Just take a break, go outside, walk around, come back in again. That does help get the blood flowing again because you need that freshness to perform. And I would suggest 4 hours maximum for any kind of performance because you're pretty tired after that. Now, I think I skipped something here. If you are doing, is it better to be a specialist or a generalist when it comes to voice work? The smaller the market, the more general you can be. When you're trying to figure out what kind of a performer you're going to need to be, I would practice at being a generalist because different formats are going to teach you how to do different things, and you can use everything. For example, being a stage actor, being a film actor, being a television actor, being a voiceover artist, each of those disciplines teach me something that I use for the other ones as well. So being a commercial performer, being an animation performer, being a long-form narration, either e-learning or audiobook or narration, documentary, all of those will teach you things about the other formats. But when you're marketing yourself, the more specific you can be, the better it's going to be. People need to get to know you as this. You are now Coca-Cola. Focus on that. You're not Pepsi, you're not 7-Up, you're not Orange Tang, you're Coca-Cola, you're one thing. So the more specific you can be, the easier it is for you to market yourself. Like I say, if you're in a small town and you can be all things to all people, but the larger the market is, and let's face it now that with the internet, we're international, so it's a very large market. You can work in Beirut, believe it or not, from here, or from your home. So where do we leave it from there? Okay, if you're doing character voices, what is the minimum you should have in your repertoire? Well, we all have a bunch of character voices in our repertoire now. Just being a normal human being without doing anything, you have probably 25 to 30 different character voices in your body, just your natural body. The way you talk to your dog, the way you talk to your kids, the way you talk to your boss, the way you talk to your lover, the way you talk to your spouse, which is a different way, by the way. You talk to everybody differently. There's a different intonation, there's a different intention, there's a different attitude that you have when you speak to each of those different people. So if you're reading a script, try to imagine you're speaking to your dad. Then do it again as if you're speaking to your 3-year-old. Then do it again as if you're speaking to your spouse. Those 3 different ways, you'll notice, if you can actually focus and see that person you're talking to, is going to be completely different, even though you're saying exactly the same script. Play around with that. That's really interesting. But that's where we start with character voices. And character voices, if you watched the movie last night, it was great in the sense that it was telling you about how you can use how they look, attitudes about their size or what they do or where they're from, or those kind of things to add to character voices. These are all layers, but they still are built around you. You've got to be the basis of every character you have, because then it gives some reality to it. That character can have emotional state if it's based on you. Okay, I'm bouncing around a little bit here. If you speak other languages, should you have a demo in each language or one demo that shows a variety of languages you speak? Yes, have a demo in each language, because there are companies in Toronto, but it doesn't matter because it's all done online now. Companies in Toronto that will that market different languages, people with different voiceovers. So once you become proficient at doing voiceover, confident in who and what you are on microphone, then I would record just short little snippets, maybe 2 or 3 different attitudes, 30 seconds long total, in each of the languages that you can speak fluently. Because if you're doing it in a language, you're going to be presented to people who speak that language. So if you sort of have a weird accent, doesn't matter. I had a very good friend of mine who grew up in Northern Ontario speaking French, became fully bilingual. We were working together in Montreal in an English radio station, and he could not get voiceover work in French because his French had an Ontario accent and they wouldn't use it. Now, since then, he's learned how to become a flat French accent, and now he works internationally. So the same thing with English. You have to learn how to flatten your English accent. If you're regional, hang on to that. That's part of your toolkit. But you need to have a general flat Midwestern American accent, because then you can work anywhere. Next, when you're starting with people, how much would you charge today to do beginning work for them? That's really hard. As far as rates go, there are a few sites. One of the ones I gave in the link, they have different rates to have. I would do it if it's people start with a barter, especially if you're starting out, start on a barter. When you're marketing internationally, when you're marketing and auditioning, I would do standard rates. Come up with a rate card, how much you're going to charge for each thing. But when you're working with people, you can start it as a barter and say, listen, I'll do this for you. I mean, the first few things I did, I just charged $25. Now, this was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Do I want to know? 25 years ago, I think it was, when I started doing, maybe even longer than that, 30 years ago. I couldn't be that old. With people start bartering. I wouldn't do it for free. Always put some value in what your work is, because they need to. If you're free, they're going to treat you like you're free. So if you're free, they're going to say, well, they're not very good, they're free. So if you charge $100, they say, oh, well, he's a professional, he charges $100. You're treated by what you pay, by what you charge. So be aware of that. Don't be free, because you'll be treated as if you have no experience and you're terrible. They are paying for your brand. So you get competent at being on microphone, being yourself on a microphone, presenting, you're sharing information. You're never selling, you're sharing information. So you sharing information competently on a microphone. That's your brand. That's what you're charging for. You're not charging for, I've been doing this for 45 years, or I've been doing it for 6 minutes. As long as you're competent, you're charging for your brand, all right? You get paid by the hour or by the job. We touched on that yesterday. It's by the job generally. Different jobs have different financial bases. There's union and non-union. Non-union generally has a buyout, where they say, we'll give you $200 and we own it forever. A union traditionally has residuals, but they do have buyouts as well. If you are never charged by the hour, don't go by the hour. They'll say, hey, I'm going to give you $25 and it'll only take you 15 minutes. So you know, you're charging for your brand. You're not charging by the hour. You never charge by the hour. Now, having said that, certain things charge by the finished minute and by the finished hour. Audiobooks are by the finished hour. Narration, generally, e-learning, that kind of thing, are by the finished minute. Sometimes e-learning is by the finished hour as well. So, as we said yesterday, the slower you speak, the more you make. But that's also a good habit to get into, just so that you can allow things to land. There are standards. I would use the scale in ACTRA. Find out what that is. There's also different sites. One of the ones we linked, GBAA, I think was one of the links we gave out. They have a suggested price list. Don't charge any less than that. That's the basis of what you should charge. That's what normal people get charged. When you get good, you can charge double that, triple that, quadruple that. But basis start there, because you want to prove that you're a professional. You don't want to say, I'm not worth anything. I'm a $25 performer. You're going to get treated like a $25 performer. And when you want something done well, they'll go to somebody who's a $100 performer or whatever. Keep that in mind. Can someone starting in the industry expect to get paid for their work? Yes, definitely. Fiverr, I hate Fiverr. Apparently it's a good stock to own, but I hate them because we had an ad that went out a little while ago. People said, I can do your job for $5. And then I had an ad that came out and said, I can fix jobs that were done for $5. Again, you're treated by what you charge. If you're charging $5, they think you're new and you're terrible and you have nothing. So always charge for your work. As I say, when you're starting out and you're working with people you know, barter's okay. You know, particularly if there's something that you both need. So that's something you can work on. Do you need an agent to do voice work? If so, the same agent who would handle your acting work. Well, that's tricky. Acting, you should have one agent. Voiceover, you can have multiple agents, because voiceover traditionally handles your local area. So I have an agent in well, I don't think they're in Beirut anymore, but they were in Beirut. I had an agent in West Virginia. I have an agent in Atlanta. I have an agent in Vancouver. I have an agent in Toronto. I have an agent in Los Angeles. So I have different agents for different areas. Any of those agents can get national work, but I'll be honest with you, generally for voice work, I get more work than all my agents combined for voice work, because they're only hustling, you know, you're only a portion of what they have. So yes, ultimately getting agents is great. If the agent isn't doing anything for you, dump them and get another one. They are your salesperson. They work for you. I know you hear this all the time, but if they're not working for you, then get rid of them and get somebody else. But generally, you can find your own work. And we gave you some links yesterday that you can look into in getting your own work. So that's enough said about that we can go on and on about agents. I do find if you have an agent, same agent for your acting and your voiceover work, if you're looking for a new agent, you don't have a lot of experience and you already have an acting agent and they're willing to handle you for voiceover, that's a great way to get into it with them. But the problem is as you get better, let's say you could become really good at voiceover, but not so good on camera, then it's a little harder to break away from them if you need a better voice agent. That kind of thing gets a little tricky, but initially that's quite all right. Should you have a website? Definitely. It doesn't have to be crazy. It just has to look good. It's basically, who are you, what do you do, and how do I get a hold of you? That's all it needs to be. Just make sure it's pretty, that it looks good, and go to it and say, oh, that looks good, and it's easy to navigate. So who are you, what can you do, and how do I get a hold of you? That's all it's got to have, not all these fancy bells and whistles. So most people can do that themselves using a template. It's just a way to help your marketing, and it's a way to send people. So you can hand out a business card and say, hey, check out my website, or because we don't hand out demos anymore. So this way, if they can go to your website, they can just click on it and have a look at it. Can you use snippets from paid work you've already done on your demo reel? Definitely, by all means, especially if you're really proud of it. Traditionally, when I'm creating a demo, I don't use paid work that I've done, because when you're doing work, you're working based on a person's script and a person and the director. They're deciding how it's going to sound. So if you're really happy with how it turns out, by all means, if you're an iconic, if you're the voice of McDonald's, and everybody knows that commercial with you on a McDonald's, definitely use that, because then that's a calling card that they'll be aware of. But generally, when we produce demos, we usually do it, we fabricate them. We just make them up because that way we control what's in it, how I sound, what I'm working on, you know, those kind of things. But definitely, yeah, if you've got something you've done regular voice work that sounds great, use it by all means. I did miss something here on singing. When it comes to singing for voice acting, how is it different from regular voice work? How do I audition for singing work? Well, if you're a singer, I would put it in your demo as you're saying, but do it more as a walla. A walla is a noise or a sound, extenuating sound. It's something that, you know, I walked into the room and, oh, there she was. So the gasp is a walla. If you're, I just love making toast. I mean, if you want to put your singing in to the commercial that way, or just add it as an you know, just as a piece, that's one thing. A singing demo is completely different than a voiceover demo, and that's a different topic altogether. If you were a singer, you can make sure that they know you can do that in your voiceover acting, but that's not something you want to keep your demos very specific. And same with singing, you want your singing demo specific for singing. You're doing voiceovers, commercials, and you want to put in that you can sing. Maybe your character has just a moment where they, you know, have a burst into song for a second or two, but don't have a commercial piece, a singing piece, character piece. You know, again, a character you can add into just to show that you're a personality in your commercial, but you don't want to be all things to all people, because if they're looking for characters and you only get one little character piece in your commercial demo, they're not going to listen to it. If you want to do a commercial demo and you get singing in it and character and it's going on, because remember, your demo's not going to be much longer than 30 seconds. Like a minute is the longest you ever want to do it, and they'll never listen to it that long. Nobody will. Maybe your mom. But that's it. They listen to the first 5-10 seconds. So in the first 5-10 seconds, they need to know what you do and whether you're right for what they want. So just keep that in mind. You need different demos for different things. Can you choose snippets from paid work that you wrote? Yeah, we did that already. Can I copy existing commercials and re-record them myself, or does the script have to be completely different? You have to be quick here. The police are coming to get me. Here's the thing with doing existing commercials. It is that if it's really good, which is probably why you're drawn to it, you're going to be compared to that commercial. You don't want to be compared to something, especially if it's really good. You want to create your own image. So I would find commercials that are done somewhere else, like edge.com is one of the sites I gave out. They've got thousands of commercials. Grab some from there. Don't include locations, like don't include downtown Toledo. Don't include stuff like that. Don't include anything that makes it very specific where it is. The new 1994 Toyota, don't date it. Just make it generic. And you're only going to be using 8 to 10 seconds of it anyway. So you still record 15 seconds to the full minute, 15 seconds to the full 30, but you only use about 8 to 10 seconds. So the best 8 to 10 seconds is what you're using for it. So don't use anything that's local, because you're going to be compared to that. It's the same as doing a on-camera demo, but using Marlon Brando's best scene ever. They're going to compare you to that. You don't want to be compared to something that's already done, and especially an iconic piece. Technical issue. I have a directional microphone that they can't get it to work with mono plug. Do I have to specific interface? That's a good question. I don't know. I can't get it to work with a mono plug. Don't know. Call Long and McQuaid. They'll be able to help you with it, because I'm talent. I'm not tech. What does a typical career path in voice work look like? For example, do you begin with commercials, then move to audiobook narration? Yes, any narration is difficult. We talked a bit about yesterday, reading everything out loud as much as you can, because There's a different part of your brain that comprehends when you're reading things out loud. So we're used to reading to ourselves. So a different part of our brain, one is analytical, one is creative. A different side of your brain is analyzing what you're reading when you're reading to yourself. So start reading out loud. So first of all, you're getting a new part of your brain analyzing what you're reading. So you're comprehending. And being able to say the next line is based on your comprehension of the previous line, if that makes sense. So you want to comprehend, what's happened before you say the next line, because you're reacting to what's just happened. Okay, so narration is more difficult than commercials. Are easy because they're short little snippets, and everything else comes from there. That's why we do commercials traditionally first, because they're easy to do. There's lots to do there, and a lot of the work is commercials. I mean, there's more and more narration as the industry grows, but commercials are the easiest thing to get started with, and you can do like really low-level commercials all the way up to very expensive commercials. So starting with commercials is a really good idea. Now, if your problem is you don't want to sell things, don't think of it as selling, because if you're trying to sell, you're not coming from an honest place anyway. You're sharing information. Any kind of voiceover is basically you're sharing information on an emotional level. That's how people connect with you, and any art form is on an emotional level. So you're sharing information. You're not selling them hot dogs. You're sharing that, my God, I had this hot dog and it's amazing. And that you would say it to a friend. Not saying, buy these hot dogs, they're amazing. Nobody buys that anymore. It's not genuine. It's not connective. So you want to share the information. I had this hot dog and my God, it was amazing. So that's what you're doing. That's why commercials are very, very good. It teaches you how to get into that mode, how to be natural in an unnatural situation. So it's a real person in a real place having a real experience. That's the same for all performance, including voiceover. Start with commercials. As you get better at comprehending longer form, you can start doing narrations, like 1 minute narration, 2 minute narration, 5 minute narrations. Then you can get into documentaries, which are anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. You get into e-learning, which can be anywhere from 5 minutes to hours and hours long. Then you get into audiobooks. So it's, yes, the longer the narration, the more you have to be able to be on it. You can't do a long form narration. You can't narrate a 40-hour book if you have to do it one line at a time. It'll take forever. Yeah, that's the way. But the trick is to practice. Practice every day and practice reading out loud, okay? That's career path, okay, yeah. I am in my mid-60s. Is all this too late for me? Hope not. I sound young, whatever that may mean. No, I mean, look, when you're doing performance of any kind, you start it as a hobby anyway. You're doing it for fun. If you're doing it for a job off the bat, you work too hard. The key with performance is you need to be able to play. You need to be able to try things out. What if I did this? Oh, that didn't work. What if I did this? Oh, well, that worked, but not the way I thought it did. Performance is basically play. You have to work hard at the preparation, but when you're actually doing it, you're playing. So you're having fun with it. If you're having fun doing it, you're going to do it for hours. If it's hard work, you're not going to do it very long. It's going to be very hard to do. So I would say just have fun with it and play with it. And so if you're in your 60s, great, good for you. Have fun with it. Particularly if you've got grandkids around that you can read to. Particularly right now with COVID, and it's harder to see people, especially across the country or even around the world. Read them stories on Zoom, or read them stories on Skype, or read them stories on any of the services out there, just to practice. But again, it's reading out loud and have a good time doing it. Where the work is in the preparation. When you're actually doing the performance, that's when you're having fun. Okay, cool. Now at the bottom there, you'll see on my screen there, Dan's voiceover classes. We have classes all the time, everything from business to audiobooks to just basic voiceover, narration. I'm doing one this weekend starting on, we have a beginner's one starting this weekend, but I also do one on You Are the Character, or moving, that's our level 3. But anyway, if you want to check it out, I invite you to check it out. We have classes running all the time. We're now online. We started going online in May. And they're doing very well. We're able to reduce the price quite a bit because we're not using studios anymore. Who knew? But anyway, the company's called VoiceSpot, but the website is VoiceSpot WCS. Don't forget the WCS.com. www.voicespotwcs.com. And we'll see you at TAP, we'll see you at BAP, and maybe we'll see you in the classes. All right. Thanks for watching. Take care, guys.